Gammadda. For the people. By the people.
Newsfirst, NEWSLINE.
Failing to plan is planning to fail. Sri Lanka failed to plan, but right now are we planning to fail? Good evening and welcome to another episode of Newsline. Your usual host Farah Shaukat Ali is out for the day. I'm Sharlan Benedict and I will be sitting in for him today. Getting to know our guest for this evening, not a stranger to the show, Mr. Kirti Tennakone. First a civil activist, then the governor of the southern province, and now Mr. Tennakone, what capacity do you represent yourself in?
I'm working as the Executive Director of Center for Human Rights and Research, which associates with the research and more on the human rights.
So more towards the civil activist
Yes,
side right now. Mr. Tennakone, Sri Lanka is at a crossroads. I don't think I need to appraise you or the general public about the situation that we're in right now. There are various people saying, you know, this person is to blame, that person is to blame for the situation that we're in right now. But the primary concern of everybody should be, how do we get out of this situation? There are people calling for accountability, and accountability must come in the process. But Mr. Tennakone, people are dying. I think you already saw the news items of children dying without medicine, children dying because they couldn't find, their parents couldn't find fuel to take them to a hospital. These are really heartbreaking scenes, and knowing that these things are happening in our motherland makes it all the worse. Mr. Tennakone, let's start off our discussion with one of the policy changes that the current government has suggested, the 21st Amendment to the Constitution. However, there seems to be no consensus on this either in Parliament. Even the Bar Association has said that the amendment is not strong enough. It doesn't cut down on the President's powers as the 19th Amendment. You must have taken a look at the draft. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, there are some possibilities and there are some impossibles within the framework of, the present situation. We will, there are thousands of people talking about this at the moment. They are having their inspirations, they are having their dreams, they are having their, fantasies in some sense. So, but we should look into the practical sense, saying that, if we can at least the minimal thing is at least we have to go back to the 19th Amendment. So then the checks and balances can be established. Then we could have a better chances of governing in a transparent way. So this is the baseline for the if someone is really taking care of, or really concerned about the 21st Amendment. So having said that, we are having a parliament. Whatever we draft, whatever the fantasies we are having, whatever the talk we do in the streets, the reality is finally this proposed 21st Amendment has to go to the Parliament, and it has to pass with the two-thirds majority inside the Parliament. The Parliament is dominated by the Podujana Peramuna, the Pohottu. We cannot ignore the fact that their domination is almost two-thirds in the Parliament, and we are having one of the weakest oppositions when it comes to the when it's constituted by the 1978 Constitution. So the main opposition is having somewhere around 65, the main opposition in total. The other factors, now some people are crossed over independent and some have crossed over. There are some people might be independent within another 2-3 days period of time, and the TNA is a bit divided. And when it comes to the Muslim parties, the Muslim Congress and Rashad Baduddin, their members are not intact. So the issue basically in Parliament, opposition is having something like 58 or 59 for that matter. So they cannot do whatever they wish or they are fantasized. So this is the hard reality when it comes to the 21st Amendment.
Right.
We have to draft something which can get through to the Parliament and get passed with the 2/3 majority in the Parliament. So establishing the checks and balances is the key factor. But the President was given unbelievable amount of power, and that power has led to this present situation in the country. So once again we have to take back the power which was given to the President back to the Parliament, and the checks and balances, establishing the independent commissions has to take place, and that's how it has to work out. I mean, the same scenario was down there when it comes to the 19th Amendment, getting to the 215 in the Parliament, getting more than 2/3 in the Parliament. But at that particular time, Maithripala Sirisena took care of that. He took the responsibility of getting the 19th Amendment to a reality. And the other hand, Ranil Wickremesinghe, the Premier at that particular time, he saw that vast amount of powers are coming back to the Parliament and to the Prime Minister. So he fully backed. And the civil society led by Sobhita Thero at that particular time was fully onto that. The whole country was looking for that. But here, at the present moment, we don't see that sort of a commitment coming from any political party. Right, the government, the Pohottua is not ready. They are divided. And the Pohottua parliamentarians, they are having some 60 plus independent members at the moment. The SLFP is having something else, and some people, the people like Vijayadasa Rajapaksa, who has mastered with this particular thing, is having some other thoughts. And moreover, the opposition is so divided on the 21st Amendment. So I think we are having a very tough voters on this, and we have to take care. Someone has to come, the President or the Prime Minister or both of them has to come forward and saying that we are going to take care of this, or this is our child sort of approach, like Mr. Maithripala Sirisena did at that particular time, has to come out, or otherwise all this talk might be ended with the smoke.
Mr. Tennakoon, we've seen how Parliament functioned, especially after the May 9th attacks on peaceful protesters. There were about 4 days that Parliament convened after that. A majority of those days were allocated for parliamentarians to express their, well, anger, sadness over their houses being destroyed. But very little time was allocated really to discuss the problems of the people. Do you think that bringing back this 21st Amendment and, creating such a discussion and a division over this matter that Sri Lanka already should have passed back in 2015 is another attempt to divert the public attention from the things that are really happening in this country?
Don't forget the fact that it is the ruling party in the Parliament who's deciding, who's having the say on the Parliament agenda. So it is the ruling party, the Pohottua, who put this particular thing, saying that the attacks and counter attacks has to be discussed on the Parliament. So then first they allocated 2 days, and then it went for 4 days sort of. So then that is the hard reality. So there's nothing the opposition can do in that sort of a situation. But as you very correctly said, this is not what the people are looking for. They are looking for answers. They are looking for answers for fuel shortage. They are looking for answers for the gas shortage, fertilizer, agrochemicals. There's a severe shortage of milk, food, everything. Everything. And our normal lives are very much disturbed. As you very correctly said, the people are dying, the patients are dying, there's a malnutrition for the pregnant women. When it comes to the children, malnutrition is a key issue. There's no public transportation. So, these are the concerned issues to the people.
Mr. Denakon, you said you were working with human rights and ensuring that Sri Lankan people's human rights are ensured. This is a violation of the people's right to life.
This is right to life, of course. I mean, the grave factors, the very fundamental basic rights of the people are very much disturbed. I mean, to get the access to medicine is the very basic fundamental right. So that is not there. And
also, Mr.
the malnutrition is becoming a huge issue. I mean, now this session of the cultivation when it comes to the paddy and all that. So almost the 2 months has gone past. And there's no fertilizer still. There's no agrochemicals when it comes to the which is essential for good crop and all that. So it is not taking place. So we are very much disturbed. And I mean, our predictions, or when it comes to the agriculture department predictions, we might lose something like 65% of the harvest this time. So we are definitely facing a very tough time within no time.
Mr. Denakon, also something disturbing that happened during the past few days was this letter sent by the Inspector General of Police highlighting the fact that many of the OICs who were appointed to the police stations were political appointments. Is this even legal?
I mean, we are having a police commission which is paralyzed. We are having a public service commission I mean, which is not taking any decisions at the moment. I wrote a letter to the Public Service Commission saying that at least the Deshabandu Tennakon has to be interdicted, because the Public Service Commission is vested with the powers to work on the police department. Transfers, interdictions, disciplinary actions has to take through by the Public Service Commission, which is neglecting their duties at the moment. Having said that, I mean, during the last 2 years, we saw some individuals, politicians, try to get their henchmen to the relevant their areas, and they are not well trained. They are not having enough qualifications. Most of them people are not even faced the interviews. So those are the areas where the law and order during that last 2 weeks was very much disturbed. The senior, trained, disciplined the police OICs and the senior officials did their duty. I have worked very closely with the police department during last 6-7 years. I was a member of this Police Reforms Commission. So we know the individuals. The police is having a vast amount of capable people with the department, but when it comes to the political interferences, all these people, you know, playing was sidelined, and that's how we ended up with this sort of a situation.
If someone tries to harm me, if I'm facing any injustice, the first place that I would go is the police station. But when the Inspector General of Police writes a letter, and in his letter he says, out of the 184 OICs in police stations around the country, 182 of them, that's almost 99.9% of them are political appointees. How can the people trust the police department? I mean, they are vested with the power to protect our lives, the responsibility. How can we trust?
As a civil activist, I mean, during last 6-7 years, we have gone to the police on various corruption charges, public litigations for that matter, when it comes to the legal terms. I mean, these allegations, we went with almost all the information which simply work out and investigate and then make a case into the courts, but that has not happened. So we saw this sort of a political interference, influence coming throughout last 2 decades. So it is not just happened during the last 20 or 22 months. It has happened throughout. It happened with the bond case, it happened with the sugar and all these issues. When it comes to the bribery and corruption, all the big fish is,
Still out there.
It's out there. So these issues has to be addressed with the mechanism, or otherwise we could have more troubled voters within no time.
Mr. Tennekon, you said the big fish are out. I think the same expression or the same sentiment goes for the tax on the protesters on the 9th of May. You know, going to an institution that's supposed to protect our rights, that is so heavily politicized, brings out a Sinhala quote into my brain. It's "Horage ammagen pena hana wage." When you go and try to get justice from a place that is so heavily politicized. We'll cross over to a short commercial break and join you on the other side. We received some questions from some of our viewers, especially Mr. Tennekon, coming right up your alley regarding the possibility of holding elections. We'll get into that discussion after this short commercial break. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Newsline live.
Newsfirst, Newsline.
Unruly conduct by local government member. A protest march from Nodil Gama to Prime Minister's residence. Sri Lanka to get new army commander. IMF chief reveals how support will come to Sri Lanka.
We have clarity of what.
Will Sapuga Skanda be closed permanently?
පිරිපාදුවේ බෝයිලර් කීපයක්ම ලීක් වෙන්න පටන් අරන්. බොරතෙල් මුංගේ එනකොට පිරිපාදුව දුවන්න බෑ.
When will the kerosene shortage end?
දවස් 5ක් පොලිමේ ඉන්නවා. ලාම්බු තෙලුත් නැහැ, ගෑසුත් නැහැ.
Newsfirst, Newsline.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsline live. We've received some questions from some of our viewers, and one viewer raises a question, Mr. Tennekon, what's preventing us from conducting elections right now and solving this crisis? Many people say that the parliament doesn't really represent the people's mandate, that they've lost the trust of the people, the social contract has been broken. What's preventing us from holding an election?
Money. We don't have rupees. We don't have dollars. We don't have papers. We don't have inks. So basically, we cannot go for elections. Otherwise, I mean, unless we are printing more money. The whole amount needed for a parliamentary election is immense. I mean, without papers, you cannot do a parliamentary or whatever election. I mean, you should have, I mean, whether it's legal or illegal, that's a totally different thing. But election without papers, you know, you can think of.
But maybe we're not there yet. Digital voting is a thing in the Western world.
I mean, we are talking about the reality and the practice and and all that. So here we don't have money. I mean, there are thousands of priorities has to be addressed. We don't have medicine. I mean, what is the priority when it comes to election or with the medicine? The people are dying. Each and every day, people are dying. Right? The malnutrition is the other factor. We don't have even 3 portion, right? So which directly goes to the children and the pregnant women. I mean, what is our priority? So we cannot go for an election. At least for 2 years, I don't think going for an election is a reality.
At least for 2 years?
Yes.
Mr. Tennekon, now...
We are going to print more money to pay this month's salary. So that will end up with more inflation. Then that will end up with price hiking for every single thing. Right? 180 rupees per exercise book.
A 40-page exercise book.
40-page exercise book. So this is the country we are living on. Right? Each and every day, the packet of, lunch packet or a breakfast, you are paying maybe 20, 30, 50 rupees more. And how can we have elections in that sort of a circumstance? And moreover, that is not just the expenses what I am really concerned about, but how can candidate go to the people and they will be whacked? They will get whacked, right? So this is, I mean, here we are in a situation, more and more crops were damaged without fertilizer and the agrochemicals. So we are going towards a famine. So then, I mean, the most important thing, or the most the first priority should be given on food security. Without food security, the people will fight with each other.
But Mr.
Because
Tendulkar,
hunger cannot, you know.
it's not like a fuel shortage. I mean, we've seen what a fuel shortage can do. I mean, it does affect people's lives.
Definitely, yes, but without
hunger,
food, without bread, you cannot do.
But what's sad, Mr. Tendulkar, is the fact that Sri Lanka was never expecting or anticipating or even facing a danger of a famine. It was this sudden decision to, well, ban chemical fertilizer, and this decision was championed by the minister, the ministry, the officials, but is there no accountability?
Sri Lanka is a tropical country, so we had enough sunlight, so we are having a fertilized soil to crops to we can grow. We can grow and grow and grow. We have done it. So whatever the circumstance, we have gone negative balance in 2020. I mean, there's no economic growth whatsoever. Economic growth was negative, but we didn't have famine. So the issue here, so banning the fertilizer and the agrochemicals has done unbelievable damage to the whole country, right? The people who fed the country is no longer doing their work down there. So the main income still comes from the agriculture. So I am doing my agriculture work in Badulla, and I am doing it in Vellavayu also. So I am having the upcountry and low country experience with the agriculture. So without fertilizer, without agrochemicals, you cannot basically do that sort of a massive, economically sustainable work down there. So people cannot, the individual cannot lose each and every day, right? So there are no seeds, there are no income for the people. There are the farmers are not getting you know, for what they have invested. So I mean, spending something like 40,000 for a bag of urea and doing cultivation is impossible basically. So that's why this particular issue has come into that particular level. If you go to Mayanganaya and or Ridimalyada and Monaragala, the area where the most of these you know, farming is done on you know, rice and the other minery and all that particular things, almost 60% of the crop has lost, right? So now we have passed almost 45 days with this season, still without urea, still without agrochemicals. So the same result will come this time, and the people cannot sustain, the production is not coming out, and the whole country is suffering just because of that. So we are in a man-made crisis. This is not a natural crisis. This is not a natural disaster for
It's not even an economic crisis. It's a man-made economic crisis.
Economic crisis, man-made agricultural issue, which was not addressed. Even the professionals highlighted this particular thing for a very long time now, almost 2 years. In 2020 April, that was the first time the fertilizer shortage was affected with the hill country. especially with the potato cultivation and the vegetable cultivation. So the people said that if this rooting is going to happen within next 2-3 years, we will have a definite issue. And this was the issue for last at least 16 months. People continuously demanded for fertilizer and the agrochemicals, which was not addressed by the government.
Mr. Tennakoon, what's actually saddening is the fact that now there are allegations that politicians robbed us, and I think it would be remiss of me or anyone for that matter to completely disregard that, saying, you know, no politicians have robbed us. We've seen what has happened to this country. We've been robbed of our money by whoever was in the administration. We've been robbed of our right to life, our right to education, our children's right to education, our right to obtain food, medicine, basic essentials. And in the end, we are now being robbed of our dignity to live as dignified citizens of a country. Mr. Tennakoon, amidst all of these crises that we're facing, we've received another one question from one of our viewers, but I need a short answer because we're almost up with the time. Mr. Tennakoon, this money that has been stolen, or allegedly stolen, we've been speaking of this for many a year, for decades even. Every administration that comes into power says we will bring back the money that was robbed by the previous administration. Is this something that's going to happen?
I mean, if there's a will, there's a way. When it comes to that, assets recovery and all that, I have somehow experience on that in 2018 and 2017. I mean, if Sri Lankan government really wants to get our money back, there are ways. We have to work with the State Department, we have to work with the IMF, there are programs with the IMF, there are programs with the World Bank, there are enough technical assistance with the United Nations to do that. But are we really willing to get that? Or, I mean, there are no investigations happen with most of these cases. When I was working with the anti-corruption front, we have filed more than 465 cases on corrupt allegations, with most of these information were down there, right? But no one took care of that. Number one priority, the number one issue has to be addressed when it comes to the assets recovery is that we have to file a case here in the country, in Sri Lanka for this matter, and get a court order. So we are having professionals to do that. What we are lacking is the enthusiasm or engagement or the willingness to do that, because we are surrounded with the corrupt politicians plus the corrupt officials. And moreover the investigators.
But Mr. Tennakoon, this also reminds me of this incident where the Serious Frauds Office in the United Kingdom investigated the Airbus fraud, where Sri Lanka lost millions and millions of rupees. The other countries that were involved in this were compensated, but Sri Lanka was not because we did not file a case. Because
wherever there's a severe investigation going on, wherever in the world, Sri Lankan name is coming out.
Yeah, but we never get compensated. Thank you very much, Mr. Tennakoon. There are many other questions that I have received. Unfortunately, we are out of time. But of course, we will have Mr. Tennakoon back again on our show very soon, hopefully, and hopefully at that time Sri Lanka is in a better place than it is right now. Take care, stay safe, be wise when you step out, and even if you are taking part in any activities, it's best that we think twice before we do anything rash. Thank you very much for tuning in to Newsline. We will see you again, same time, same place tomorrow. Until then, take care and God bless.
දශකයක ගමනක්